everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we would discuss the books that I have read in the first quarter of 2025. I don't feel like I read enough each month to do like a monthly wrap up, so I thought I would try and do quarterly wrap ups instead, just so then I'm still getting out some form of review or just thoughts and feelings for books that I have read that might not be included in videos, and I don't think many of these have because I've been very absent and not been making any videos really. So we do have 8 books to talk about today, most of which were read in January. February and March, I don't know what was going on, but the slump was slumping and I barely read, and I've only just come out of that slump towards the very end of March. And looking at the stack, I've actually unintentionally either completed or continued with quite a few series, which is really good. When I think back to the books that I've read and my reading the first quarter of the year, I think it's been quite up and down. I've enjoyed some books. I've not found any new favourites really. I haven't had a 5-star, and yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like I'm still really trying to find my reading taste. It changes every day and I am a mood reader through and through, so I feel like it will always change and there's not really a clear pattern in my reading. But anyway, I'm just rambling now, so let's just get into the books. The first book I read was Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias. This is a dystopian fiction novel that follows an unnamed narrator as she's navigating this economical disaster in her city. I did actually read this as the first book of the year and I did vlog it, so there is a vlog that I will link somewhere with my full thoughts and feelings on this book. I haven't rated this one. I still don't really know like a solid feeling on it, because part of me thinks like it was really great and the writing and the thought process and the story deserves a 5 stars, but my enjoyment levels, 5 stars is a feeling and I didn't get that feeling, and at parts I was wanting more. So yeah, I'm still not too sure how I feel about this one, to be honest. I definitely think if you like dystopian novels, or if you were a fan of Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, anything with a bit of a weird turn to it, you would really like this. I did enjoy it. I'm just not completely sure how I feel, and to be honest, I do usually love an unnamed narrator. I love the ambiguity behind it and you don't really know their full sense of character, but I think maybe in this book it potentially let it down a little bit. I think if we could connect to this character a bit more, we could have connected to the story and the disastrous aspect of it. I'm not too sure. But yeah, that was the first book that I read and would still recommend if you like a certain type of book that I've just mentioned really. Then the next book that I finished in 2025 is Kingdom of Ash, which is a big chunky book. I say finished because I read most of this in December of 2024, but I finished I think the last 150 pages in January this year, and boy am I glad to have this series finished. I know it's a really beloved series on BookTok, Bookstagram, BookTube. Readers really love this series and really connect with the characters. Personally, it's not my favourite. Oh, hot take, unpopular opinion probably. It's not my favourite. I think some of the books are entirely too long. Personally, did this book need to be over 900 pages? No, it didn't. And I don't really understand why it was. There were quite a few scenes towards the end that I noticed where things were just being repeated, and I think you could just cut this out. Have it once, have that moment and leave it. But for those of you who don't know, this book, Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas, is the 8th and final book in the Throne of Glass series, which follows Selena Sardothian, who is a trained assassin. And in the first book, she is locked up in prison and she has a chance to get her freedom by competing to be the king's champion and essentially be at his disposal as an assassin. So much happens. There's magic, there's fae, there's witches, there's pirates, kind of, there's shapeshifters. There is so much in here, and I do really like the character progression and the relationships that the characters have with each other and the friendships. I think that is something really special in this series, and I did enjoy it. I gave this a 4 stars, but I don't know, I thought it was too long, and as a series as a whole it isn't my favourite. For personal preference, I prefer the first 4 books rather than the last few. Depends where you read the Assassin's Blade. I prefer this is really hard to say without spoilers. I prefer our main character at the beginning of this series towards the end, so maybe that's why I didn't quite love this as much as everyone else, because I know this is really loved. And I do think it was a great wrap up to the series. It just was too long for me, and I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. And I think maybe also you have to bear in mind that I really fell out of love with this series when I was reading Empire of Storms. I really didn't like that book, and that sort of left like a sour taste in my mouth towards the end of this series, so maybe that's why I didn't love this as much as others have. But I know this whole series is really beloved, and a lot of people love this final installment, and again, I did enjoy it. It just wasn't my favourite conclusion. Then, for a bit of a change of pace after that chunky fantasy, I read Night Shift by Annie Crown. Now this is a romance set at university where the star of the basketball team goes into the library and asks the bookworm who's working there, Kendall, for some help on one of his stories. One of his stories? Did I just say one of his stories? Asks for help on one of his papers and that he has to write. And they sort of strike up this deal where she will help him write this paper or find what he needs for this paper, and he will help her become a bit of an extroverted girl who gets that full university experience. And I really loved this. I was just going into this as a bit of a palate cleanser, just wanted a book to read in sort of one go, which I did. I absolutely devoured this book, and I just think it was so great. I loved the dynamic between our main 2 characters and the care that they have for each other. It's sort of, you can really see how they pick up on each other's characterization and try and bring that out in each other, if that makes sense. I don't think that does, but yeah, I just really love this. And I think if you are a fan of sport romances or romance in general, or the bookworm trope where like the main female character is the bookworm, anything like that, I think you will really enjoy this. And I really loved it, and I can't wait to see what the author comes out with next. I don't think I mentioned, but I gave this a 4.5 stars and really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was, I've forgotten what it's called, The Traitor Queen by Danielle L. Jensen. This was, or is, the second book in the series, but it's also the book that wraps up the first sort of duology. So in the Bridge Kingdom series, it's sort of made up of different duologies. I think there's 6 books in total. Currently book 5 has just come out, but each 2 books follows like 2 different characters, so it's got this overarching plot, but it's split up into 2 books for each set of characters. Again, I can't really say much about this because it is a sequel, so I'll just give you a brief background on the Bridge Kingdom, which is the first book in the series. So the Bridge Kingdom follows Lara, who is the daughter of a king, and essentially her and all her sisters have been trained to see King Aaron as an enemy, and Lara is sent to kill him basically. So she's been brought up and trained to only know this fact, and she goes and marries King Aaron and plots to overthrow his kingdom and also kill him. But along the way she realizes that a lot of what she's been told as she's been brought up isn't entirely true, and a lot of it has been twisted. So we follow her navigate this different kind of political landscape that she wasn't aware of. She's very much been brainwashed into thinking it's a certain way when it's not, and when she goes to live with King Aaron she starts to discover this, and we sort of follow her decide what to do with this information. Will she go through with this plan that she's been brought up to execute to the end, or will she not? I really enjoyed the first book. The second book, I really enjoyed the plot. I thought it kept moving at a really great pace. So much happened in that second book, and I was constantly thinking, is this bit going to be dragged out? Is this bit going to be dragged out? But the author wove so many different things into that book that kept the plot moving at such a fast pace. It was really great, and I think that was really well done. For me, I don't know if it's because I left it like a year between reading the first and the second. I just personally felt that the attachment that I had to the characters in the first book wasn't there in the second book, and that's what let it down a little bit for me. But I still really enjoyed it, and I will continue on with the series. I think personally if you read the first book and enjoy it and enjoy the characters, you should go straight on to the second one, because I think maybe that's what let it down a little bit for me, is that I wasn't completely attached to our main characters and wasn't rooting for them as much as I felt like I should have, especially because I loved the first one a lot. Now we're getting into a couple of disappointing reads again. The first is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yaros. I know I need to take the sticker off, ignore that. So this is the third installment to the Fourth Wing series. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. Listen, I enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Iron Flame, but there was a point in this where I felt like it could be a 4.5 star, and then she sort of just backtracked on the whole plot, and I didn't enjoy that. I was like, there was a certain thing that happened. Again, I can't say a lot, especially in this book or with this series. There was one thing that happened, I was like, had me hooked, ready to continue this series for book 4 whenever that comes out. And she just backtracked it. And I read somewhere, or I think I saw a TikTok, that essentially the plot of this book just did a full circle and we didn't really get anywhere. We are pretty much at the exact same spot as we were at the start of the book, just with one thing slightly changed. I will say, however, since reading Larry's analysis of the ending, I am a bit intrigued, and I think if that is the case, we could be going somewhere quite interesting. I'm not in love with this series like everyone else, and I'm sort of continuing to read it, or will continue to read it for, I guess, to say that I've completed the series, and also a bit of FOMO. I feel like I'm hoping that book 4 or book 5 could be like life-changing, and I just don't want to miss out on that. So I will continue the series, but I don't love it like everyone else loves this, and I gave this a 3 star. But again, so many people loved this installment. A lot of people who were disappointed with Iron Flame like I was, then thought that this was so much better. So it's all about personal preference. I just personally don't like it. It should have stayed as a trilogy, and it could have all been wrapped up. I think you can definitely tell that it started as a trilogy, and then the book deal that the author had got extended to be a 5-book series, and she's just trying to fill that out. Also, me and my sister were having this discussion about series and when you read them as they are being released, should you have to reread them so you are aware of everything that happens? And I think that's a really interesting discussion point. So a lot of people were saying if you don't like Onyx Storm, it's because you need to reread the first books or the books before that to really understand what's going on and pick up on all the theories and everything. And we were both saying, like, we don't have the time to sit and reread 2 books, and then it's going to be 3 books and then 4 books ready for the 5th one. Who has the time for that? So should you have to reread the books before to be able to enjoy a book as much as some others who have been able to reread it? Or do you think you should be able to just be able to go in and pick up exactly where you left off? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting discussion point, and if you have any thoughts on that, let me know. But yeah, Onyx Storm, 3 stars, not my favourite. And then one I'm really sad to be disappointed in actually is Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. This is a little festive Christmassy novella set in the world of Caraval, and it comes after the whole Caraval series, which is a series that is like a big circus with trust issues. It's one of my favourite series. It's one that got me back into reading, or I read when I was getting back into reading, and I love it so much that I was so excited for this. Hear me out. I know a few people agree with the opinion that I have on this. I wanted more Scarlet. I don't really care for Donatella. I think she's just unnecessarily reckless and just doesn't really care about any consequences. Whilst I did enjoy being back in the world and seeing the magic that comes alive in this world, I just didn't care that it mostly followed Donatella. I would have happily have just had literally a little book like this, just following them all, having a Christmas day together, or whatever they have in this world. I don't think it needed this mystery aspect, and it follows like the romance that Donatella has from the trilogy, and she's like made it into a game, and it got a little bit weird. Like, it felt very inappropriate and also felt very, I don't know, I don't want to spoil anything. The glimpses of the romance that we got at this, it made me very uncomfortable, especially because she didn't know this person, or at first she thought she didn't know who this person was and didn't think like that she was close to them. I don't know, it just made me very uncomfortable, and it gave it a sour taste in my mouth. I just don't think it needed to go there. I gave it a 2.75 stars because I did enjoy being back in the world, and I enjoyed seeing the magic and the like festive setting of it. So it did have some good qualities, but yeah, I am quite disappointed and upset with this one, or upset that I was disappointed by it. Then we have another series continuation. I was apparently on a roll, and that is Beg, Borrow or Steal by Sarah Adams. And I just need to take a minute because the 4th and final book in this series has just been announced, and the cover, are you kidding? It's so gorgeous, and I can't wait to get my hands on that book. But back to Beg, Borrow or Steal. So in this one we follow Emily, who works as a teacher in the small town of Rome, Kentucky, and she sort of has this rivalry with a fellow teacher called Jack. And at the start of the book we see that he's meant to be leaving town with his fiance, or leaving town to get engaged and get married and just leave the town forever. But then she hears rumours that apparently the engagement fell through and he's not getting married anymore, but she thinks that he still stayed away, and she's sort of left feeling a little bit intrigued about what's happened, and he's constantly on her mind. And then he comes back to town. He hasn't left town, he's back, and not only is he back, he is now living next door to Emily, and we see this really funny rivalry between them that's sort of been built up throughout the years. They knew each other at university, and it's just continued on. And I did really love this one. I think Sarah Adams has a way of writing these characters that I just absolutely love. She knows exactly what to put in these books and how to navigate each of the characters' difficult topics. So for Emily, she's very hard on the outside and just trying to keep everything together as one of the oldest siblings, but deep down she's feeling quite abandoned now. All her siblings are sort of moving on and doing their own thing, and she's also got a lot of grief, which this is the one thing that I felt a bit let down on, or that could have been done a bit better in my opinion, is that grief was discussed in this book, but I felt like with Emily's character especially, it could have been discussed a lot more. I'm a griever, and I love when books have a really good discussion point around grief. I find it really comforting and always take a lot from that book, and that's what I was expecting with this one. But I personally thought, or from what I can remember, when I read this, there was a couple of scenes and then it was just sort of brushed away, and I felt like with Emily's character would have fitted to have a bit more of a discussion on it, especially from what we learned being in her head. But it was still really fun, really heartwarming, and yeah, I just love this series so much. If you haven't read it, it's the When in Rome series by Sarah Adams, and I would highly recommend. Rating wise, I gave this a 4-star. Okay, then I read Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Ebike Ayomide, and I can't lie, I don't remember too much about this. We follow Sade, who is the new girl at this boarding school, and it's a very prestigious, very white boarding school, and it follows Sade as she navigates being the new girl. And on the first night that she's at this school, her new roommate has gone missing, and we sort of see Sade become pulled into this investigation of the missing roommate and what's happened and how it all unfollows. I do think it has some really important topics discussed in here. So it's like misogyny, the historical aspect that these kind of schools have with these boys, or what they call like gentlemen clubs, the boys club, entitlement, things like that. It's really important topics that are discussed, and I think the author does that in a really brilliant way. Personally, the plot wise, it just wasn't for me, and it didn't have me as hooked as her previous book, Ace of Spades, and I didn't particularly love the ending. I felt like, I just didn't love it, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy my time. I did. I gave this a 3 stars. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy reading it, and I enjoyed or could really appreciate the topics that the author brought to light in this book and how she navigated those topics and sort of adapted them for younger readers, because this is a YA book. I just didn't love the ending, because at the end of the day we have still got that mystery plot there, and I didn't love how that turned out. The penultimate book is Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. Now this is the book that pulled me out of my slump, and I'm so grateful for this book and this author. So this follows Chloe, who Chloe has been through it with her family, or her mum, and she gets a call one day at the supermarket to say that her mum has just given birth and she wants to see her. This is a completely unexpected pregnancy to everyone, and when she's at the hospital, she agrees that she will become the carer for her sibling. but because of her job situation, she can't prove that she's got a steady enough income to look after herself and her new baby sibling. And so the Child Protective Services have got this new program where two people who are wanting to care for someone or their siblings, I can't remember if it's specified, but two people who are wanting to care for someone who are sort of struggling in one area, they match them up and pair them together so they can sort of do this together. So we see Chloe, who's got the financial aspect, and then we meet Warren, who wants to look after his brother and doesn't have a suitable housing situation because he's only got a 1-bedroom apartment or flat, but his brother is 15, so needs his own room. And so these two get paired up and they move in together in Chloe's apartment, and we just see how they navigate this new dynamic and a romance ensues. Now, I did really enjoy my time with this. I think it's not like a romance I've ever read because we've got some really heavy topics discussed in here and touched upon with the foster system, the different care systems and how that's sort of impacts a person who's been in care, and we've got the adoption side of things. So I think this was really, really interesting. However, it was a bit too insta-lovey. I just would have loved to see some more yearning from them. I think this should have been told in dual perspective so we could see from each side how that yearning is really there and how we see Warren fall for Chloe. And I just think we should have got a bit more of Chloe falling for Warren as well, because it was sort of like she found him attractive and then all of a sudden they kiss and I'm like, oh, okay. And then they're talking about like being together and how they navigate that, etc, etc. But it was really good. I had a great time with this. I gave it 4 stars and I can't wait to read more of Hannah Bonham Young's books. And then lastly, my voice is starting to go, so I apologise. But lastly, we have Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Now, technically, I finished this on the 1st of April, but I read the most of it in February and March. So I'm just going to include it in this wrap up. If you've watched my 5-star predictions videos, you will know that this was a 5-star prediction for me. It was a 3-star. And the more I think of it, I think it's probably a 2 and I should have DNF'd. I know I should have DNF'd it. But I didn't. I pushed through because I only had like 100 pages left. So this follows Tress, who lives on this rock. She lives a very quiet life and she loves this quiet life that she has. And she has her best friend Charlie, who is actually the Duke, I think, but he doesn't like to be the person the Duke is. He just wants to be Charlie. And one day his dad sees him and Tress getting close and his dad thinks this can't be happening. Tress comes from nothing, they can't fall in love, like they can't marry, etc, etc. And so he decides to take Charlie to sail the seas to find a princess for him to marry, but he does everything he can to stop this happening. He doesn't want to marry a princess and he does everything he can to sabotage each potential match. And he does so much so that his dad decides to leave him in the Midnight Sea in the hands of the sorceress, who is this person to be feared. And so Tress decides to go on an adventure to save him. Now, I did enjoy the character development of this. I thought Tress's character was just beautifully done, and I can really appreciate how much she came into her own and she actually enjoyed being this pirate out on sea, going on all these adventures. and I think the relationships that she formed with the people in this book was quite special to see as well. But I just didn't care. Like, nothing had me gripped. I felt there was just a lot of, even though I enjoyed her development, I do feel there was just a lot of her being like, oh, I should do this, but I shouldn't, or I need to save Charlie, so I need to do this, but I can't. And I'm just like, girl, just do it or not. Either go ahead with it or go back home to your little rock. Again, I feel like I've had quite a few unpopular opinions in this wrap up because so many people loved this and gave it a 5-star. And I just didn't care for it. And it's made me scared that cozy mystery is not, cozy fantasy is not for me. To everyone who loved this, I'm very upset that I didn't, because again, I thought it was going to be a 5-star. If you've watched that video, you also would have remembered me speaking about a talking rat in this book. And I did enjoy the rat, but I felt like the rat needed more personality for him to really be considered a rat, in my opinion. He just wasn't ratty enough, and that is all explained at the end, to be fair. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as I hoped. I gave it 3 stars. Okay, I'm going to end the video now because I am rambling. I've been talking for 42 minutes. I have an appointment. I don't even know what the time is. I have an appointment soon. So I'm going to wrap this up. How have I spoken for 42 minutes about 8 books or 9 books, whatever? I was thinking I was going to struggle to find things to say, but apparently I found things to say, whether it's useful, whether it's valid, I don't know. Thank you for watching, and if you want to subscribe then please do. I am hoping to be bringing so many more videos. I know I said that in the last one and I've not, but I'm getting my head back in the game, as Troy Bolton once said, and I'm trying to get back into my creativity. Trying to get back into my creative frame of mind so I can film some more videos. As I said, I just love to talk about books. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it and a subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in whatever comes next. Bye.